Today's masterclass, essentially session, is going to start off by talking about artwork approvals. This is a feature that's been in DecoNetwork for many years. And I'll be honest, when it first was added, it took me personally a long time to implement it and start using it on a daily basis to manage orders. Once we started doing it, it was like, why didn't we use this earlier? So for those who don't know, within Business Hub, when you're processing an order, in the very middle of the left-hand column, there's something called artwork approvals. And artwork approvals can work a few different ways depending on how you have the settings configured. And you can decide to just use it for internal purposes before we send an order into production, or we can decide to involve the customer or not. Hi, guys. Artwork approvals. So very, very important thing. Come over to decoration processes. This is very not obvious, but for each of your decoration processes, you have an artwork fee. And you see the term artwork fee, and we think about charging something for prepping artwork for a job. So digitizing for embroidery, vectorizing often for screen printing. What that artwork fee really is this automatically create the job, puts that artwork whenever it's uploaded into the artwork approval queue. So if you ever wonder, okay, why does embroidery go into artwork approvals, but screen printing doesn't? Well, it's because this little box isn't checked. So big one I see that's typically not checked is
screen I'm trying to watch trying to get into this.
So go back to screen printing. Malcolm, how did you unmute yourself? Okay, so screen printing is the big one I often see that is not checked by default. So you may need to go into your screen printing setting, automatically create artwork job. So when it's automatically creating an artwork job, that means we're going to automatically put it in artwork approvals so that we look at the artwork before we send it into production. That does not mean we're going to charge the customer by default. So with screen printing, it's typically turned on, and you may choose to do it for all designs or only user uploaded designs. It's really up to you. But typically this number would be free. Now, when it comes to these decoration processes, right now, I think there's up to 8. If you're just starting with DecoNetwork and you haven't, or you're not using all 8, DTF is everyone's new and favorite process. If you have the space here, you may want to break up DTF printing. So maybe what I would do, so digital printing, I would call this DTF onto apparel, just as an example name. So if it's DTF onto apparel, I may want to put the artwork through an artwork approval phase so that the art department looks at it before we send it into production. Whereas if it was a DTF transfer that somebody is outsourcing to me, so I'm just going to rename laser, just in this example, DTF transfer. So this is one of the many pros of being able to split up a process like DTF into 2 separate processes, because if it's a transfer outsourced to me, I'm going to print what they send. I'm going to skip this artwork approval phase versus DTF onto apparel. I want it to go through there. Okay. So within a decoration process, this is where we decide if artwork by default will go in there. If it is text only, we skip the artwork approval phase. Text, if it's embroidery, comes out as a DST sew ready file. It sews really well. When it comes to printing, if it's text, it's going to be a vector file. If we come into the general settings, production and order settings, Business Hub, actually quote order and invoice, we have a couple settings down here. So the first one is wait until artwork is approved to schedule orders in production. Okay, so what exactly does this mean? Well, the artwork that moves, the orders that have the artwork approval, it can be either an order that is an actual order and payment terms have been met. Or let's say that you offer design services, and before we have an official order, we want to help the customer make their own design. before we start assigning it to products. So if you have this box checked, wait until artwork is approved. Sorry, wrong one. Allow orders not yet paid to appear in production. That's really going to determine, okay, are we only sending orders there that have met payment terms? Or can I also, I'm just going back and forth with the customer through a quote. Nothing's finalized, but I need to design something for them. You want to have this unchecked if you're trying to do that. Wait until artwork is approved to schedule the order. It's exactly what it sounds like. You're not going to schedule the job in production until it's finished the artwork approval phase. So typically this is on. Wait until the artwork is approved to schedule it. And then typically we don't allow quotes and orders to appear in artwork approval until they've met payment terms. Typically that is unchecked. Again, you got to decide what's best for your business. And then this create an order artwork approval for orders which have customized items. That doesn't make much sense. I'm going to help you make sense of it. So again, to recap in the admin, make sure the direct decoration processes are turned on for an artwork fee if you want the order that type of process artwork to go into the approval stage. And then make sure in these general admin settings within quote, order, and invoice that you have this set up based on how you're going to want to do it. So let's go back over to Business Hub. Let's refresh because we made some changes. The first thing to keep in mind is there's a difference between an artwork approval and an artwork job. An artwork approval is essentially sending something typically to the customer as a second layer step of, okay, everything looks good, right? And that could be any design that's uploaded or even just text versus an artwork job. When I go into artwork approvals, if I have an order like this, where there's two different designs, this is one artwork approval, but then within the artwork approval, there are two artwork jobs. So try to keep that straight. Artwork approval just means, hey, it has to be approved before we send into production, schedule it and all that. But artwork approvals typically revolve around jobs in which we're going to download the artwork and maybe upload a new file to replace it. So when we put together a quote or an order, so we'll select the customer. When we add artwork, so let's come in, let's do full color design. Just do the DecoNetwork logo. So for this full color printing process, I don't have it currently turned on to automatically charge an artwork fee. Again, we don't have to charge a fee, but if I had that artwork fee on by default within the decoration process, this design requires changes would be on by default. So if this was embroidery, automatically, if it's not an EMB file, that's going on. When it comes to screen printing, I don't care what file type, I'm always going to send it into the artwork approval so that that job gets looked at before it goes into production. DTF, if you want to break it into two processes, you have better control. So again, this being checked versus manually checking it, that all comes down to these decoration process artwork fee settings. There's a lot of different terminology here, but it all is related. So requires artwork changes. Right here, I can give this design a name. So I could say, okay, DecoNetwork logo. And I can put in a description down here. Customer doesn't want registration mark, the little R in the top corner here. So we can describe the job to the artwork department, and they'll see this when they're in artwork approvals for that job. Click done. Now, if back here within our general settings, quote and order invoice, if this is checked, create an order artwork approval for which orders have customized items. When that's checked, this automatically is checked for any time artwork is added. So I could have added just text. Remember what I just said a little bit ago? Text doesn't trigger an artwork job, but text with this checked will trigger that job goes into artwork approvals. So it gives us that extra layer before we send it into production. So we added that artwork to it. It automatically design requires changes. I'll save it. And when we look at this, you have that artwork fee down here. There's always going to be, quote unquote, an artwork fee, but it could be zero in this case. Anytime artwork goes in approvals, you're going to essentially have a fee. So before we jump into artwork approvals, I want you to realize there's a lot of different types of notes. So you saw I added a description to the artwork job. If I ever email the customer, I would add a note for the customer, and this is a customer note. Customer notes will appear in the history notes of the order. If I add an internal note, this internal note will be seen in production, but not necessarily in artwork approvals. If I need to leave notes for the art department, I don't want to add an internal note. What I really want to do is make sure the notes are in this description, because this is what the art department is going to be seeing. This is more so for production. And then down here, I have more order notes, and these can be seen in the artwork approval area. So lots of different types of notes. Some of them do appear in artwork approvals. Some of them don't. Some of them also move their way into production. Let's look at the overview. So what we have are order statuses. An order status is, one, have payment terms been met? Yes or no? Secondly, have we ordered the products? Have we received the products? What most shops do is orders come in, I'm going to raise a PO. I need to get my hands on the blanks as quickly as possible, especially after COVID. We learned how all the inventory issues. So once I get to $200, I'm going to raise a purchase order, and those shirts are now being picked, pulled, and they're on their way to me. Now, while I'm waiting for those shirts to arrive, the art department is going to come into artwork approvals and beginning to get the job ready. So payment terms have been met. We've ordered and received artwork approval. Before a job makes its way into production, how most settings are configured on most DecoNetworks account, I have to order and receive the blanks and have the artwork ready before I can actually produce anything. You can't print artwork that's not ready or product that you don't physically have on hand. So when we mark an artwork approval as approved, you will see a green check mark here. We know here with this order, we need to work on the artwork approval. So within artwork approvals, here at the top will be the artwork that I uploaded. So let me just go ahead and refresh this. So there's the DecoNetwork logo. What the art department will do is they will view it. Now, before we go to view it, I want you to understand, just like every other section of Business Hub, you have a lot of different columns up top that you can sort by. So maybe I'm only in charge of screen print orders or embroidery. I want to first sort by the process. Show me all orders for this decoration process, in which this is the status, or sort it by due date or order date. Make sure that you have the right columns selected. So if you always click on the gear on the far right for these different sections, this allows you to sort and filter by these different columns. So let's go ahead and view this. Right here is the file that I uploaded. here is the final color version that I went with. So I could have uploaded, the blue and black, and then I could have made it all white, and this would be the all white version. What the production or the art department's going to do is they're going to download one of these two files. Depends on what they find easier to work with. So they would download this, and then typically I'm going to take that into Illustrator or Wilcom to digitize the file. And then I'm going to upload the final version right here. So when I upload the final version, it's going to ask me, do you want to resize the artwork so that it's essentially the exact same size as what we downloaded? Or do you want to keep the same size that essentially you're uploading? So if you uploaded a smaller one, it would become smaller, bigger, bigger, obviously. So we're going to just go ahead and upload that same file. So I would choose file. In this case, I just downloaded it. So we'll go ahead and upload it again. And sometimes an artwork approval doesn't mean that we have changed anything with the artwork. The customer technically can give us a vector file right off the bat, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily ready to be color separated and good to go. So it's always good to download the artwork, have the art department look at it, and then determine, okay, do we need to upload a new version or is this good to go? And you can see when I uploaded the file, it then became placed on the shirt, and on the design tool itself, I can now change it if I want. So you know what? All of a sudden, customer contacted us. They actually wanted it as a left chest. Well, change it there, and it'll change on the shirt. Obviously, that preview is a little different. But so this is what was initially uploaded by the customer. This is the final color scheme. This is the final, what really should be a vector file typically for print. If it was embroidery, I would have uploaded an embroidery file that can actually be downloaded and sewn. Something to keep in mind, if I had only this ink splash, and then I added the text DecoNetwork within the design tool, only the ink splash would be here because that is a piece of artwork that was uploaded. I don't download the artwork and the text combined within artwork approvals. It's all about prepping a file that can then be combined with text if there's text in there. Text is already a vector. Text is already a sewable DST file. So when we upload, we're typically only uploading clip art that was initially uploaded by the customer. Any text that was added within the design tool is not downloaded here. It just gets combined. Just like in an order, you can have internal notes. The thing about artwork internal notes are they are really only for the art department. These art internal notes do not show up in the order notes. They do not show up in the production notes. So if you put anything here for artwork notes, it's really just for the internal art department team. Here in your order notes, so an order note again, if we come back up to this order, so I always find it easy to click on the order number here. Let's edit and let's do this. Let's change these are order notes. So if you have extra notes and you put them in there, these notes will show here in the order notes once they've made their way. Right here is where the description is for the job. So when I was putting together again, and I put in the job notes here and the job name, that information within artwork approvals is down here. So again, if you're really trying to give the art department some direction, you really want to put it in the description because that can easily be seen. So what happens once we've uploaded the artwork? Well, we can then choose to send it to the customer or simply mark it as approved And if we just simply mark it as approved, that's the art department giving the thumbs up. Hey, we're good to go. So if I mark as approved, I'm bypassing the customer for them to have to approve the job. I am just trying to make sure production, there's a step before it. If I choose to send this to the customer, it will send the artwork approval PDF. Now, that works pretty well. But if you're like my shop, anytime we digitize something for embroidery, we're going to do a test sew before we actually go into production. When you're doing a test sew, you cannot come in to send to customer and attach a photo. Just not possible. What you can do is add note for customer. And just like within the order section, or the sales and service, when I add a note for customer, what it's really doing is you're emailing the customer. And that's where I would attach a test sew. And it's different than an artwork approval, because in an artwork approval, when you send that to the customer, they're emailed a link that takes them into their profile where they click one of two buttons, accept or reject. And they physically are pushing something, well, kind of physically pushing something to accept or reject. When you add a note for a customer, you're more or less emailing the customer and you're asking them, does the attached test sew look good? And from there, they're going to email back yes, no, and so forth. If they say yes, then I'm just going to mark as approved myself. If they have a problem, then we're going to edit it before we go on. So again, if you need that extra communication, add a note for the customer, ask them for approval in that email, and then do it for them from here. Okay, now let's say that you do a lot. I'm seeing this more and more often, especially with AI. Let's say that you're doing design for the customer. The customer doesn't know how many shirts they need. They don't know what they want it on, but they do want to pay us to make their artwork before we begin anything else. So if we go back to the general settings, allow quotes and orders not yet paid to appear in artwork approval. If this is on, I can start, and this is what I did actually with this last order, or this last example. I can add a quote. So again, we'll select myself, add a product, change the shirt color to make it a little easier on ourselves. So let's go white, load it in the design tool, customer design. Let's go ahead and do screen printing this time. We'll again choose the DecoNetwork logo, 2 colors. This time, let's go ahead and make it just 1 color. So now we're all blue. Go on here. Design requires changes already selected. So if you're ever making, and this could be all zeroed out. I could have made a blank product that just was design based. There's no actual product. It's like a DTF transfer sheet. It's just a rectangle, drop your artwork on there. We're going to charge you a fee for prepping the design. So by having that checked, when your art department comes into artwork approvals, you can sort by the type, if it is a order, a quote. So if it's an order, we know that the customer's already met payment terms. Typically, that's how the setting is configured. Or maybe I just need to be looking at quotes, which is more or less, these are orders in which we need the artwork designed. What would be more common with this would potentially be a placeholder. So if I come back in and we edit, let's say the customer has no design. This is more common. Placeholder, screen print design. So I can add it here. And so that's just my current placeholder. Customer hasn't told us anything of what they wanted yet. If you're ever worried about pricing with a placeholder, let's say the customer's like, I don't have the final design, but I know it's going to be a 2 color. Well, if you didn't know, you can always click on decorations. And when you go to override pricing, you can actually sorry, screwing this up now. You can determine how many colors are in the design to charge. Whenever you're using a placeholder, it becomes essentially impossible without knowing how many colors are in the design, or if it's embroidery, how many stitches approximately are going to be in it. So just so you realize, when you use placeholders, or if you have a design, you're like, you know what, we're going to print that as a 3-color, not a 4-color, you can override it here. But with this example, we now have a placeholder. This is not an official order. It's just a quote. We need to get the artwork before we turn it into an order. Most shops don't work this way, but it's absolutely possible. I would then see, we have that saved. So let's come back to artwork approvals. Just go ahead and refresh. So this is when I would essentially replace that placeholder design that was used and upload the final version that we made for the customer. Speaking of final versions, when you are, let's say that this was a screen print job. Well, I uploaded a vector file, but this is not like a layered AI file or a layered Photoshop Corel Draw. If you are determined to upload one of those file types, come over here to the gear and attach the file there. When you attach a file here, it can be virtually anything. It doesn't have to be a PDF, an EPS, an SVG. It can be an AI file. You can store that in here. You can also create a line item note. The same thing can be done within the order itself. So if we go back into this order, you can click on the gear. You can add a line item note, and you can attach a file. A line item note, it's a little newer of a feature, allows us to record extra information. So what I might do here is, this logo is black and blue. Well, I might say blue equals a 160 mesh screen with a 70, 90, 70 durometer squeegee. Versus black is the second color to be printed. We're going to do that on a 260, and it's just going to be used on a 90 duro squeegee. Somebody's going to call out all that for me. I'm just BSing. But the order line item note, what's nice about those notes is it can be viewed in artwork approvals in addition to the order. It can be viewed in the production status. And very importantly, these files and notes do make their way over to reorders. So anytime you add a file attachment or you add those line item notes, do know that they will make their way into artwork approvals. They'll make their way into production. And very importantly, they will be on a reorder. So if you need to pull up that AI file again, very easy to do. A tip for you: if you, let's say you had this job and then the customer needed the same print, but on a black shirt or a different color shirt, the line items are independent. So if you add notes here and this is the same artwork, you may want to go in, copy them, paste them to the other line, because if the customer comes back for a reorder and they don't order this, and that's where all the line item notes were, and next time they just order this, you're not going to have those same notes. So even though they're the same design, the notes are different. Speaking of different designs versus different products, when it comes to a reorder, embroidery files, if we uploaded a EMB file, soon you'll be able to upload a DST. If you upload an EMB file and the customer goes to place a reorder and they use that EMB file, we're going to skip the artwork approval phase. We're good to go. We know that it's nothing is changing there. That design is good. We don't need to send it through artwork approvals. When it comes to print orders, it works somewhat the same way. When we think of a reorder, do not think of design. Designs do not get reordered. Products get reordered. So if it's a reorder with the same artwork on this product, it will skip the artwork approval phase for print. If it was the same artwork, but on a different product, it's going to go into artwork approvals to then be prepped. So keep in mind, EMB files, a little bit different than print. If it's a print reorder, it has to be on the same garment, the same product, not just the same design. All right. Let me just look through my notes real quick, make sure I didn't miss anything. So we talked about a line item note. We talked about order notes. We talked about the note to the customer when we want to email them. We talked about internal notes where they show up. We talked about an artwork internal note. This is, again, a line item note. This is the job description and title. You can also view order notes from here. So again, there's a lot of different ways you can go about artwork approvals. One of the big things you have to remember, though, is this is an order status, and order statuses are not connected to a production status. They are totally independent. So once I mark a job as approved, mark this, not just job, but the whole order as approved from an artwork approval, we have the green light here, or we will in a second, but it does not update the production status. So where I find this being a little bit of an issue is screen printing. So with screen printing, we can start making the screens before the shirts arrive. When those shirts arrive has nothing to do when we can actually start prepping for the job. Same with DTF. I want to print, cut, and have my transfers ready the moment that the shirts arrive so we can print them as quickly as possible. So when you're in production, your orders for like these jobs, they'll be in a waiting production. Typically, again, depends on these settings back here. Depends on how you have this connected. It'll be in a waiting production once artwork is complete and production is complete. Not ready for production typically means we don't physically have the shirts and or artwork is not ready. There is currently no way to sort by the order status. Order artwork is ready. There's just no way of doing it. The best you can do is sort by show me all of the orders that are awaiting stock. So these are all awaiting stock. And these at the bottom are also waiting artwork approval. What that tells me is we don't physically have these shirts and the artwork's not ready. I mean, I cannot start doing anything with this. These top orders, though, we're just waiting on the shirts. So if this was to be screen printed, I can absolutely start making these screens and get the job ready. So unfortunately, at the moment, there is no artwork ready, but we don't have stock or we haven't raised a PO. Awaiting stock is only one of the options. The other is a waiting purchase order. Waiting purchase order comes before stock. I've yet to order the blanks. So again, here I can sort by awaiting purchase order. This is also awaiting artwork. So it's more of sort by these two. If it doesn't have awaiting artwork as well, you can start working on that design. And you can use these production statuses to better sort filter. So what I might do is, again, show me all the orders in which we're awaiting the stock. We're waiting on the physical goods to arrive and have the new job production manager needs to map it. What the production manager might do is they might say, okay, this is the mesh screen we're going to use and so forth. We're going to assign it to this individual, this press and whatnot. So what I could do is then come here and let's say that I know that I can make this job. The production manager did their thing. They mapped out the strategy. Well, I can then update the production status to screens need developed. That is the production. Now the production manager has given the check. Hey, we're good to go to start working on these jobs. If I'm in the dark room, I wouldn't even need to be sorting by any of this. All I am cared about is show me the screens that need developed. I don't care what the status is because the production manager has done that step to then assign the production status. And now we're good to go. Hopefully I didn't make that real confusing, but you got to remember for order statuses, production status, completely independent of one another. And once you've completed the artwork approval order status, you probably want to get into using the production statuses to better filter and know where an order is at in production. All right, guys, I went a lot longer than I thought I would on that. Artwork approvals, the big thing to just keep in mind, you aren't sending orders into production until they are ready. It's up to you if you want to involve the customer or not. You can make that decision from order to order, process to process. For our shop, if it's print, I don't ask the customer, hey, does this vector look better than the bitmap? I pretty much know that. So we bypass the customer when it comes to print. Every embroidery job, we always do a test sew, send a photo to the customer. I want them to see what their design looks sewn before we start committing it to expensive products. So strategy is always different from shop to shop and even from process to process. You got to just find out what works best for you.